Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone. On October 15, 1981, a terrible event took place. A cruel death happened in the home of Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone, a 30-year-old single mother from Quebec. On that Thursday, this horrible thing happened during the day. While her 4-year-old daughter was at school, Carolyn McBride, Sonia's friend, got the idea to go see her around afternoon. She had no idea what an awful scene she was about to see. Someone found Sonia's dead body on the living room floor, with pantyhose tightly around her neck. What had happened on that terrible day that Sonia died too soon? How did the killer get into her house? And what caused her terrible death? Carmel by the Sea, which most people just call Carmel, is a beautiful coastal town in California's Monterey County. Many people love it because of how beautiful and peaceful it is. With only about 4,000 people living there, Carmel still feels like a small town. The town has a crime rate of 1.14, which is much lower than the national average and helps to make it seem like a safe place to live. The peaceful people who lived in Carmel along the coast had no idea that it would become the scary setting for the case of Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone. While she was alive, she lived in many places. She was born in 1951 to Anthony and Stella Hurricane. Although Sonia was born in Quebec, Canada, she chose to move to Carmel in the 1970s. She started a new part of her life in this pretty beach town. Getting married to Michael Stone was another big step in Sonia's journey. In 1976, they had a girl together. However, they finally got divorced. The 4-year-old daughter of Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone went to school on Thursday, October 15, 1981. She had no idea what was going to happen to her mother. According to the Farmer's Almanac, Sonia went to see a family member before going home after 10 a.m. As the day went on, Sonia's close friend Carolyn McBride chose to do what she always does and stop by her house around noon. She had no idea that the sight she found would follow her around forever. The body of Sonia was lying on the living room floor in her home, not moving. The clothes she used to wear were sloppy, and her shirt and jacket were pulled back in a way that did not look right. Someone made a dangerous ligature out of pantyhose and strangled her to death. There was Sonia's dead body lying among the things that were in her purse, which made the scene even more disturbing. Investigators used to think that assault was the reason for this horrible crime, but over time, questions and uncertainties crept into that story. The probe into the tragic death of Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone was a difficult puzzle. She had many things in her purse, which led to thoughts of a possible theft. However, the exact items taken from the house were still missing, which made the case difficult to solve. However, when the autopsy report came out, things became a little clearer. The results supported the scary idea that the police had come up with. Sonia had been strangled to death. People who were working on the case got chills when they realized what they had learned. The news story said that Sonia died too soon on the morning of October 15, 1981. As the body was being examined, another interesting fact was found. Sonia's left ring fingernail was broken, and there were bloodstains inside the piece. The fact that there was blood under her fingernail gave the investigation a small bit of hope because it meant that there might be more DNA proof. Unfortunately, the forensic technology that was available at the time was not very good, so it was very hard to get and study this proof. After the horrible murder, the police started talking to everyone who knew Sonia and her neighbors. As the investigation's threads came together, doubts began to grow about a neighbor who lives across the street from Sonia's house. Michael Glaze Brooke, neighbor of her, became someone the police had reason to look into. Michael Scott Glaze Brooke, who was married and 25 years old at the time, had just moved into the neighborhood and was living in the house next door to Sonia's a few months before the terrible event. It was during these important conversations that investigators noticed Glaze Brooke was tense and awkward. They also saw a large 3 to 4 inch vertical scratch on his right cheek, which made their doubts even stronger. As flaws in Glaze Brooke's story started to show up, the pieces of the puzzle started to fit together. At first, he said he was at his dad's house when the murder happened. As the investigation went on, it became clear that Glaze Brooke was a college student and a builder at the time. Matthew LaHoreau, who is the Deputy District Attorney for Monterey County, talked about the interesting relationship between Sonia and Glaze Brooke. Investigators were confused about what could have possessed Glazebrook to carry out such a horrible act, since they had no previous connection or knowledge of each other. It was hard for Sonia's friends and neighbors to find any connection between the victim and the person they thought was responsible for the crime. This added to the questions surrounding what happened on that terrible day in Carmel, California. Police in Monterey County made an arrest on December 18, 1981, 2 months after the horrible murder of Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone. The first time, Glazebrook was in the Monterey County Jail on charges of killing Sonia without bail. Soon after, he was freed without any warning, and the newspaper said that no charges would be brought against him. There was not enough proof to bring charges against Glazebrook in December 1981, according to Dean Flippo, who was the assistant district attorney at the time. There was a change in the district attorney's office and the agents were patient. When the new deputy district attorney took over, they presented their case again. The new deputy district attorney gave the go-ahead for the arrest, and Michael Glazebrook was given a criminal arrest warrant for his new home in Pacific Grove, which is 5 to 7 miles north of Carmel by the Sea. The Pacific Grove police caught Glazebrook on July 23, 1982, and set his bail at $250,000. Glazebrook could not pay for a lawyer, so the government took over his case. In August 1982, a hearing began. The defense asked for a lower bail amount and stressed that Glazebrook was not a flight risk because he had been the main suspect since December 1980, and had never left Monterey County. They also said that he did not pose any danger to the neighborhood. The judge agreed and dropped Glazebrook's bail from $250,000 to $50,000. The first hearing began in November 1982, 4 months after Glazebrook's second arrest and 1 year after Sonia's death. The prosecution had many important things to do during this meeting. They had to explain what happened that led to Sonia's death, prove that Glazebrook was the person who did it, and show enough proof to show probable cause. When there is a preliminary hearing, the level of proof is not as high as when there is a trial. At a trial, the prosecutor needs to show proof beyond a reasonable doubt, while at a preliminary hearing, they only need to show probable cause. Dr. Edward Blake, a serologist, told the judge at the preliminary hearing that he looked at the victim's blood and urine and found no signs of attack. Another expert, coroner, and top medical examiner, Dr. Boyd Stevens, said he was good at reconstructing scenes of assault and said the bruises he saw on the victim were consistent with and indicative of assault. Michelle Wilson, a friend of the accused murderer, was called to speak and was very important. Wilson had already told police that she had a chat with Glazebrook in which he supposedly admitted to being in the victim's home on the day of the murder. She also said she saw Glazebrook's face scratched, which he said was from a fight at Monterey Peninsula College the day after the murder. However, when Wilson went on the stand, she changed her story in a way that no one saw coming. She said that the passage of time had made her forget some details of the talk. The prosecution was surprised when she said she had never told investigators about the talk. The prosecution responded by calling one of the sheriff's detectives to speak about what Wilson had said before she changed her mind. Keep in mind that as more study and testimony came in at the trial, differences showed up between what witnesses said and what the investigators had written down. These errors may not have anything to do with the case itself, but they make it harder to understand what happened in this case. Even though this setback happened, the judge still thought there was enough evidence to charge Glazebrook and continue with the hearing. In February 1983, someone asked the Monterey County Superior Court to drop all charges against Glazebrook because there was not enough proof. The judge who was in charge of the hearing used the transcript of the preliminary hearing to make his decision. Like the first judge, he thought there was enough probable proof to go ahead with the trial. The judge did not believe that the state could prove Glazebrook's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. In June 1983, another hearing took place. This time, the defense requested the judge to dismiss derogatory comments made by Glazebrook to the police. The judge granted the request. Using these comments during the preliminary hearing might have aided in establishing probable cause. However, the charges against Glazebrook were dropped because these comments could not be used in court. However, Glazebrook was quickly fired because he was caught again for murder in July 1983. After almost 2 years, this arrest must have been very upsetting for Sonia's family and friends. The case had many meetings and appeals, and almost every judge in Monterey County was involved. This made it harder for the family to deal with their grief. Thanks to the new arrest, Glazebrook got a new preliminary hearing and a new public attorney. There was enough probable cause to go to trial, even though the meeting only lasted 3 days. It looks like this new arrest was not based on any new information or proof. This means that the prosecution would still have the saw me problems they had in the last trial. One big problem for the prosecution was that the statements Glazebrook gave to the police, which were gotten in a sneaky and illegal way during the investigation, were not used in the case. It turned out that Glazebrook's arrest on civil traffic warrants by homicide investigators instead of traffic police was just a trick to question him without actually charging him with murder. The judge said that this arrest was wrong and that any proof or information gathered during that arrest could not be used in court. There was finally a trial in November 1983. On the first day, the state called several of Sonia and Glazebrook's neighbors to the stand. They aimed to locate evidence suggesting that Glazebrook was present in the vicinity during the estimated time of the murder, believed to be around 10:15 a.m. However, Stone's body was discovered at 12 p.m. The defense countered this by presenting various neighbor accounts indicating that Stone might have returned home closer to 11 a.m., which raised doubts about Glazebrook's whereabouts that morning. Glazebrook's dad said in court that he saw his son at home around 11 a.m. On the day the murder happened, Glazebrook was there to help him move his things to his new home in Carmel. Glazebrook's parents also said that they did not see any scratches on their son's face that day, which would have been sometime after the murder. Michelle Wilson was a witness who had already appeared, but the prosecution called her back as a hostile witness. In line with what she said at the preliminary hearing, she insisted that she had not told the police anything about a talk she had with Glazebrook. A doctor from the emergency room said that the day after the murder, he had fixed a scratch on Glazebrook's face. However, the doctor did not think a person's fingernails caused the scratch. In other statements, detectives said Glazebrook told them that the scratch happened when he touched a piece of plexiglass while working on a boat in the backyard. A bar owner said in court that she saw a man. The witness said that on the Thursday before the murder, she saw a man who looked like Glazebrook in her bar. There was also a scratch on this man's face. When detectives called her a year later, though, she did not want to single out one person from the bar. She was only able to give a general idea. This information brings up one of the main problems the lawyers had to deal with during the trial. It seems like the investigation might not have been done completely. Many of the things witnesses said in court were different from what detectives said they knew from their first interviews. There are differences because investigators threw away their written records after typing them up, and the defense asked to see the original records. The judge said that the person who destroyed the records did not do it on purpose, but the problem still exists. Glazebrook's parents said that no notes were taken during their interviews, but detectives did not agree. There were gaps between what witnesses said and what detectives wrote down, which might have been because of memory problems. In addition, some witnesses seemed to be changing what they said before. Cases in point, an investigator used Glazebrook's scratch on the face and his nervousness during the interview as signs of suspicion, even though these details were not in the investigator's notes. In a different case, an investigator said that the bar owner could not positively identify Glazebrook, which was different from what was written in the investigator's notes. The case was not easy because they could not use evidence they got during the illegal arrest, and there were questions about the probe itself. A mistrial happened because the jurors could not agree on whether the person was guilty or not. They voted 9-3 in favor of acquittal. The 3 jurors who did not give up became important in any future trials. Researchers would not be able to arrest Glazebrook again, even if they had more proof. Because the district attorney's office looked at the case again in 2020, the Monterey County Sheriff's detectives chose to look into it again. Even though Glazebrook got away, the case was still open, and the Monterey County Sheriff's Department kept thinking about it. In 1983, a hero said DNA testing was not available, and blood typing was the only way to tell who someone was genetically. The DNA proof was very important in this case. It was the most solid straight evidence that Glazebrook was involved in the murder. One of the family members, Stone, told the investigation team, "The family would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to this team. We are glad that Sonia got what was coming to her because she was a great woman." The judge was set to pass sentence on Glazebrook on April 26, 2023. However, the tragic death of Michael Stone's wife has left deep emotional scars that have been hard for him to overcome. Not only did he have to grapple with the trauma of losing his wife, but he also had to face false accusations of being involved in her death, despite being cleared of any charges by the police. Thankfully, advancements in DNA technology have now provided Stone with an opportunity to begin the healing process. Carolyn McBride, a close friend of Sonia's, informed the police that Michael Stone was unfit to care for his daughter and that Sonia and Michael were no longer together. In May 1980, Dr. Milton Esta Stone's daughter's family doctor conducted an examination and interview with her. When Sonia's mother shared her concerns with him, Dr. Estes concluded that there was no evidence of any issues. Michael Stone did regain custody of his daughter eventually, but she later relocated to live with a family member in British Columbia, Canada. Melissa Lee. On April 13, 1993, a terrible night, darkness fell over Melissa Lee's peaceful home in Bothell, Washington. When she was only 15, she was by herself and looking forward to having a friend over for the night. When she last called her mom, it was after 9:30 p.m. It was a normal call to make sure she was okay. They had no idea that this would be the last sign of Melissa in those familiar walls. What could have happened to Melissa Lee that terrible night? What would have happened in the dark hours that caused her to disappear? Bothell is a charming city in King and Snohomish counties that is home to about 46,000 people, nestled between Seattle and Everett. Bothell has a peaceful suburban feel and easy access to city services. It is in a great spot in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, which is known for its great schools, family-friendly areas, and beautiful parks. Many people think that Bothell is a great place to live, and the community values a close-knit feel that makes people feel like they fit and are part of a group. There is crime everywhere, but the crime rate in Bothell is lower than in bigger cities. This means that people who live there can enjoy a safe and peaceful environment. Melissa Ann Lee, who was born on February 2, 1978, had a life full of hopes. When Melissa was only 15, she had a beautiful charm that made people want to be around her. Mother loved her daughter and said she was beautiful, sweet, and always nice. She brought happiness with her everywhere she went, and her lively spirit left a lasting mark on everyone she met. One brother, Herrick, was 19 years old, and the other was 13 years old. She wanted to be a model and see her special beauty on the catwalks and on magazine covers. Melissa felt better after spending time with older people, helping them out and making them smile. Her natural ability to connect with others helped her make long friendships, and people admired her beauty and charm. On that particular night, Melissa Lee was at home while her mother, Sharon Lee, worked as a bartender at a nearby place. The friend Melissa was looking forward to spending the night with never showed up. Melissa was really looking forward to seeing her. As the night went on, Melissa's brothers also left the house. Just after midnight, Sharon Lee and her fiancé went back home, but Melissa was not there. As Sharon looked at what she saw, her heart was full of worry. Someone had broken in because the front door was open and the living room was a mess. Someone had moved the coffee table out of place, and there was an ashtray and a jar of peanuts all over the floor. A milk glass that fell over made things even more disorganized. Strange things that were left at the scene of the crime added to the mystery. There were cigarettes that did not look like Marlboros and a lighter that Melissa clearly did not own. In addition, there was a strong smell of chemicals in the air that made Sharon feel even worse. Sharon knew deep down that something was very wrong, whether it was her gut feeling or the obvious signs of chaos. She did not want to just sit there and wait for Melissa to come back, so she did something right away and filed a missing persons report. Sadly, as the day went on, the dreams of a safe reunion were dashed. On April 14, 1993, around 3 p.m., the police found Melissa Lee's dead body. People found her body in a narrow, rocky gorge below the Edgewater Creek Bridge, which is on Mukilteo Boulevard at the very western edge of the city borders of Everett. When people thought of the happy, lively girl who had won their hearts, they saw this horrifying scene. Melissa's clothes showed that she was upset about what had happened to her. They found her with dark socks, an orange and pink San Jose Sharks hoodie, and black shorts. Her clothes were all over the place, which showed that she had been fighting, and she was barefoot, which made the finding even more upsetting. Reports said Melissa was taken from her home in Bothell, specifically in the 19800 block of Filbert Road. Investigators found that Melissa had been cruelly killed and her body had been thrown away, falling more than 100 feet below the bridge. After Melissa's sad death, police never stopped looking for justice, covering every possible angle. Even with all of their hard work, the case was very difficult, and the name of a person of interest remained a mystery. A strange spot on one of Melissa's clothes caught the investigators' attention and turned out to be a key piece of evidence in the case. Toxicology reports also showed that Melissa did not have any booze or drug residue in her body. However, they did show that ethyl ether, a colorless compound that has been used traditionally as an anesthetic and a strong drug, was present along with small amounts of heptanes, which is a main ingredient in gasoline that has a strong smell. Friends and family were shocked and could not believe what they were hearing. They were trying to understand Melissa's terrible fate. The police looked into Melissa's personal life to find clues that could help them figure out why she died so tragically. Melissa was known as a nice girl who had never been in trouble with the law before, but she had ties to some sketchy people. These friends were involved with gangs, which made detectives look into them more closely at first. As the investigation went on, it became clear that none of these gang members had anything to do with Melissa's death. Even though the police went back to the case several times over the years, it finally went cold because there were no new leads and none of the investigated gang members was directly involved. Melissa's mother said that she never thought of these gang members as possible candidates. From her point of view, they had always seemed to really care about Melissa, and their attendance at her funeral made her feel even closer to them. The complicated web of relationships and possible motives made the story even more intriguing, making police even more determined to find out the truth about Melissa Lee's sudden death. Police carefully went through Melissa's things, and then looked at the book they found in her room. Within the pages of her book, a big discovery lay waiting that would have a huge impact on the case. Lee's notebook also showed how hard it was for her after a recent breakup. Her last scribbled note from April 12, 1993, said, "I hope to God we get back together." Melissa's post from March 14, 1993, talked about her first meeting with Alan, who she had met on the phone while watching Nightline. Nightline was like Tinder in the 1990s. People often called it a party line or a date line. Fans of Nightline could talk on the phone with people in their area through the show. It might sound risky, like Tinder, because you did not really know the person you were talking to because there were no pictures. However, at that time, it was a popular activity in the area, and it gave people a chance to meet new people. Alan Dean, the person Melissa met, was 35 years old. Alan Edward Dean became one of the first suspects in the case after these revealing journal writings put him in the public eye. The mysterious details and the link between Melissa and Alan were very important to the investigation. They gave police a great place to start looking into his past and how he might have been involved in the terrible events that night. According to the police, they talked to a few men who they thought might have been involved in the case in 1993. They gave polygraph tests to 4 people to find out more information. But Brad Wolverine, who was in charge of the case at the time for the sheriff's office, said that the rumors about these men did not seem to be true and did not have any solid proof. At the start of the investigation, on May 18, 1993, the police called the numbers in Lee's address book. As one of the contacts, there was a man named Dean who was mentioned under a different name, along with Nightline. Investigator Greg Rinta of Snohomish County set up a meeting with Dean at an apartment on Madison Street in Everett, which is about 3.5 miles from where the body was found. Dean remembered that he knew Lee and said that the two of them had talked on the phone. Dean had used the alias Mike when calling the number. Even though they had been on a few dates, Dean made it clear that their exchanges had not become sexual. Dean was a Boeing mechanic at the Everett plant. He worked in the inner shop, putting together decorative panels next to Airport Road. Dean told the police that he had been out of work for a few months because of a back injury. On May 8, 1993, Dean had surgery on his back and had pins put in. The detective wrote this down. People also noticed that Dean would have had access to different drugs at work. When asked, Dean admitted that he used a different name when chatting with new people for the first time. It is possible that he also lied about his age, since Dean looked young and could have been mistaken for someone in his or her early 20s when he was actually 35. From the start, Dean's words made the police suspicious. At first, he said he did not know Melissa had died, which did not make sense given their relationship. Melissa was killed and thrown away only 3 miles from Dean's house, which raised more questions. Along with that, Dean had easy access to many poisons because he was a mechanic. There were signs of gasoline-like heptane in Melissa's system. Over time, Melissa's mother, Sharon Lee, made the hard choice to start over while still grieving and looking for justice for her daughter's murder. While she was grieving, she had to think about the health of her other 2 children, Herrick and Kelly. Sharon was worried about their safety because she thought that the person who killed Melissa might come back and hurt her other children. Therefore, she decided to move across the country to Tennessee because she felt like the stress of what was going on in Washington was too much for her to handle. However, in 1994, Sharon chose to move back to the area because she wanted to help her daughter's case in any way she could. Sharon's fiancé told her to save money and then go back to the area to put up ads, and offer a prize and offer a prize. $10,000 was the initial prize for anyone with important information that could lead to an arrest within 3 weeks. Of course, as time went on, Sharon's money ran out, and she became mentally and emotionally worn out. The doubt about what would happen to her daughter hurt her health and caused her a lot of stress. She said that not knowing who killed her daughter was killing her and was driving her crazy. There were flyers about the prize and word of the murder getting around, but no major leads came up in 1994. Sharon told the Daily Herald, "I cannot live my life with this hanging over me. It is as it is there every day and every day and every night. I want someone to be caught, not just so Melissa can rest, but so I can rest too." Dedicated people worked hard over the years to make sure Melissa's case did not get lost in the shuffle. The King of Diamonds playing card, which was given to prisoners in the area, even had her picture on it. The hope was that prisoners would know the people or descriptions and come forward with any information that could help. Since the 1970s, people have been giving out playing cards with unexplained crimes on them. This has helped solve many cases. There was no way this method could solve Melissa's case. It was the discovery of DNA proof that finally put Melissa's case to rest. As technology for DNA tests got better, detectives tried more than once to match the DNA found on Melissa's underwear. They tried many times, but could not find a good match in their current databases. To make a full DNA profile of the unknown man, a famous researcher named C.C. Moore helped. After many years of working hard to solve cold cases, C.C. Moore became famous for her TV show, The Genetic Detective, which played on ABC. In late 2018, she used her knowledge to add the unknown man's DNA to Rematch, a public family database. Then, using the DNA, C.C. Moore carefully made a very long family tree, looking for the place where 2 branches met to find the man's parents. In the course of this process, the study turned up 2 very good matches and 3 possible good matches. There were also many matches that were further away. The police picked out Alan Dean's name from the list. In July 2019, they turned their attention to getting DNA samples from Alan Dean to match with DNA found at the crime scene. There was a smart plan when 3 undercover police officers went to Alan Dean's house in July 2019. They pretended to be regular people and told him they were gum testers who wanted to know what he thought about new types of gum in order to get a sample of his DNA. They wanted to get his spit while he chewed. Dean became suspicious right away, though when the woman said she was taking Dean's DNA, in answer, Dean asked, "You are not here to collect my DNA, right?" This sudden turn of events ruined their first plan, and the police knew they had to find a different way to get his DNA sample. When April 2020 came around, a long time later, the choice was made to start spying on Mr. Dean. They were annoyed that he rarely left the house, though, which made it hard to get any useful information. Even with this delay, things got better when he finally came out of his house to smoke a cigarette. Therefore, they could test it. The police quickly picked up the dropped cigarette and sent it to the lab. When they compared the DNA from the cigarette to the DNA they already had on file, they found something amazing. It was a perfect match. The results supported their suspicions and proved that he was the criminal. He had been on their radar since the very beginning of the murder case, which was strange. Alan Dean was in Bothell, Washington, on June 2, 2023, at approximately 5 p.m. Dean was accused of assaulting a young girl in Scottsdale, Arizona, 8 years before he was charged with killing Melissa Lee. As of now, the police report does not reveal the girl's name for private reasons. She talked about how Dean gave her booze and marijuana, which she used. However, she started to feel very high, and she thought that the marijuana you ate had been mixed with something else. While she was drunk, Dean told her to take off her clothes, which she did, and then finally fell asleep. She did not know how long her sleep would last. When they wake up, they realize that they are a very different age. During investigation, Dean admitted giving the girl beer and marijuana, but he said that, just like with Melissa, it never turned into anything sexual. Even though he was not charged, he was arrested and then freed, which caused him to move to a different state. The fact that Dean has been arrested many times for things like marijuana possession, domestic violence, fighting arrest, disobeying police, and helping a minor get into trouble is important to keep in mind. Even though he had a shady past, his DNA was never put into the police database because he had never been charged with a crime. The huge bail, amount of $2 million set for his release, makes it very likely that he was in Snohomish County Jail. During his court appearance, while he was in jail, he made it very clear that he did not want to be there at all. However, his message was confusing and full of things that did not make sense. He refused to follow the court's orders and used hard-to-understand legal terms that confused everyone in the room. Many people in the courtroom just wanted him to stop talking because of how he behaved and what he said. Sharon Lee flew to Washington, D.C., for a news conference where she stood with pictures of her daughter. While the event was happening in court, she said something short but powerful about how happy she was to see this long-awaited progress. It was clear that she was okay with whatever happened. She said, "Whatever you do, it is totally fine." She also said, "I hope he brought some help." Detective Will Vatney, who was working on the case, said that significant advances in technology were very important in solving it. He also spoke to criminals who have gotten away with their crimes, stressing that law enforcement works hard with facts to make sure accountability and is never giving up on their chase of justice. Gary Lee Haynie. On January 3, 1979, a young man hunting for dogs headed to the mouth of the Snohomish River. As he came across something strange, it seemed like something was caught in fishing line. Being terrified to see that it was human bones when he got closer to the strange thing, he called the cops right away, and as soon as they got there, they started an investigation that would last for more than 40 years. However, the most important things that needed to be known were who this person was and how they died. Snohomish County, Washington, is a beautiful place in the middle of the Pacific Northwest. It is known for its cute towns and rich cultural history. This is a peaceful place to live, with lots of historic sites that tell stories about the past and fun things to do for people who like to take risks. As friendly as your grandmother's apple pie, everyone is always ready with a smile to greet you. The crime rate is incredibly low for such a close-knit town where everyone knows everyone else's name. You would not have to worry about leaving your doors open there. The strange remains found in Snohomish County in January 1979 caused a lot of trouble in this otherwise peaceful area. In 1979, the third day of January, there was still a blanket of cold weather over the county as the new year began. A local man, whose daily routine mostly consisted of duck shooting, chose to start his favorite activity on the western side of North Spencer Island. As he got closer to the Snohomish River's mouth, he saw something that was different from the normal beautiful view. In the reeds and rocks, he found something that did not belong there: bones of people. The scary sight was real, pale human bones telling stories of a life that ended too soon. Because of the disturbing find, the cops rushed to the scene near Everett, Washington. This was not an easy case. The duck hunter had found something that made it clear. It was a tragedy for people. The scary discovery took everyone off guard and shocked and interested people all over the country. Now the investigation was about to start. Finding the bones near Everett, Washington, was not at all like having a warm cup of coffee in the morning. When the cops arrived, not even they could hide the chills that were not from the cold but from the harsh reality of their surroundings. It still shocked the duck hunter, so he showed the cops the body parts. There, in the fishing line, like a creepy still life, was a football shoe and a piece of leg bone. The duck hunter helped the cops move a little to the west. The scene started to take shape, a red, orange, white, and gray checkered shirt that looked eerily close to a human head, ribs, and a shoe. A shoe that strangely still had a foot inside it. When the agents went back to the creepy scene for a second look, they found some strange things. The leather wallet was in great shape, but it was eerily empty. No money, driver's license, fishing ticket, or anything else that could help them figure out who this person was. They found a size 33 to 43 belt nearby that was lying there like an old relic. The scary treasure hunt kept going with a pair of shoes that had laces and strange numbers on them. 30 and 38. One of the few hints they had was the name O'Sullivan written on the rubber heels. There was also a pair of green pants with a tag that proudly said it was iron-free and proudly made in the USA. This may not seem like a big deal to most people, but for detectives, it was like a beacon in the fog. They thought that if they could find out where these were made and sold, it would help them find their target. Even though there were creepy hints, the mystery grew. The skeletons did not tell us much about what happened to the poor man. As the breakdown process went on, it became harder to find even the most basic answers. The broken-up body parts were given to a medical inspector to be examined by a pathologist. The doctor carefully looked at the body parts and found that they belonged to a man who had been dead for a few months. Even though it was not the most interesting discovery, it was the only one that could be made because the body was so badly damaged. No matter how hard the police tried, they could not give the mystery remains a me. At the time, Robert Phillips was the coroner for Snohomish County. He gave him a temporary ID card that said John Doe 791 and wrote down that the cause of death was indeterminate because there were no signs. After a few days, weeks, and then months, the mystery man was finally buried at Everett Cypress Memorial Park on March 15, 1979. He would be there until he could be claimed by family or finally identified. It was not long before the hard truth hit. Leads were running out faster than water in a desert. It was finally time for the spies to face the bitter truth. The case was over. The search for the remains of John Doe was far from over. The case did not move forward for almost 30 years. Modern science and police tools were the heroes of our story when we least expected them to be. Researchers who used old methods were given new ones, which gave the cops hope that John Doe 791 could finally be found. Tern Cozart, a former judge, and Detective Jim Scharf agreed to reopen a number of old cold cases in 2008. The John Doe case from 1979 come back to life like a bird rising from the ashes. The mystery of the unknown man stayed with them like an unwanted guest. A harsh reminder of lost important proof was that many tips had disappeared without a trace. Still, the determined police officers kept looking for the truth by going through old papers and photos. As time went on, agents were still trying to figure out what was going on. Since then, a lot of John and Jane does have shown up, which makes things even more confusing. To keep things straight, they gave their 1979 John Doe a new name. Spencer Island John Doe. By 2015, the police had permission to dig up Spencer Island John Doe's body. Dr. Kyle Tanaka, a forensic dentist, was hopeful that a close study of the teeth records reveals some lost clues. However, the road stayed dark, though they did not give up. They added information about the case to the National Database of Missing Persons and kept looking for a juicy bit of truth. Among the things they looked through were long-lost clothes and the dead person's personal belongings. However, there was nothing. Then, just by chance, in late 2015, a surprising tip came in like a lightning strike on a sunny day. The tip said that a certain Spencer Allen looked a lot like a long-lost farmhand from Marysville. The police, who like a good story, went on the hunt. The farmhand from Marysville who worked on an Amazon farm was not just any everyday person. He was a well-known figure in the area because he ran a fruit stand and liked hitting the sauce. It was hard to forget him because of his famous limp. His last known whereabouts was in the 1970s, and the tip seemed to be true. After a month-long search, agents utilized billion graves to locate a tombstone in Yuma, Arizona. It turned out that the farmhand in question had been resting in the southwestern desert since 1981. This discovery shook the detectives' confidence in their ongoing investigation, defying their initial expectations. However, this is not the end of our tale, not by a long shot. The unburied bodies provided Dr. Kathy Taylor from the King County Medical Examiner's Office with intriguing clues. She determined that John Doe could have been a man aged anywhere from 27 to 61 years old, standing between 5 feet 1 inch and 5 feet 1 inch and 5 feet 7 inches tall. His ethnicity was uncertain, as he might have been Native and American, Caucasian, or a mixture of the two. As more pieces of the puzzle fell into place, it became evident that this mystery man's life was riddled with contradictions. His broken femur seemed to have healed without medical intervention, yet, curiously, he had visited the dentist with significant holes in his jawbone closing and some of his teeth containing metal fillings. Detectives turned to the art of forensic sketches after running into a number of dead ends and coming up with many different ideas. Natalie Murray, an artist, stepped up. Dr. Kathy Taylor agreed with her that the drawing did look like it was of a person who was half Native and American and half Caucasian. Even though it did not give a complete answer to the mystery yet, the sketch helped detectives figure out who Spencer Island John Doe might be. Going forward to 2021, a private Texas company named Othram Labs got a piece of John Doe's leg. A group called DNAsolves.com paid for this project, which used cutting-edge technology and years of experience to get DNA from the samples. This gave police another lead to follow. After a lot of hard work, DNA breadcrumbs led agents to a woman whose DNA matched that of the victim. She told them she had a half-brother who had been lost for decades when they went to meet her. After 44 years of pain, Others M finally told everyone who the long-lost brother was in March 2023. Gary Lee Haynie was Spencer Island John Doe. There was a big event at the busy Topeka Hospital on September 23, 1950, somewhere in Kansas. Born to Bernice Helen Schaefer and Joseph Dominique Condomini, they are a lively little boy. His name was Gary Lee Haynie, and soon many people would be saying it. However, things were not great in Topeka. Parents Gary and Mary chose to split up before he could even talk. Things were moving around in the boy's life, but things were about to change. In 1955, Bernice wore white again for her wedding to a strong soldier named Sheldon Lee Haynie. Sheldon did not just marry Bernice, he also took in her young son and changed his name to Gary Lee Haynie. Then, not long after, the family moved to New York, where Gary grew up. In Gary's case, he lost both his real father and his mother when he was 16 and 19, respectively. Because of this, Gary has been living with Sheldon ever since. There were some strange people on Sheldon's side of the family. Someone once told Gary's step-cousin Hal that Gary's brain was weird in a way that made people look at him funny. There was something strange about him that made people pay attention. He quickly quit the Army and started working for the Air Force. He moved his family from the busy streets of New York to the beautiful wheat fields of Kansas. Gary missed more than his fair share of holiday dinners because the trip was just too far. Over time, he spent less and less time with his family and almost never showed up in family pictures. On the other hand, said that they never really talked anything over with Gary. It looked like Gary was a mysterious riddle that was making people scratch their heads more than a case of chickenpox gone bad. Sad to say, Sheldon's life ended in Oregon in 1997, which led to more questions. When it turned out that he had been hiding Gary's disappearance, it raised even more questions. It is interesting that Gary was officially dead 3 years before his body was found on Spencer Island. The autopsy showed that he had not been alive for months, but the mystery of his missing 3 years stayed unsolved. His death was the subject of many ideas, ranging from rockfalls to strange health problems, but no one could prove any of them. Detectives thought Gary shared a house in Everett with his stepfather Sheldon, who was known as a snowbird because he liked to move around and spent the winters in Baja, California. Sheldon went to Texas in the middle of the 1980s but never brought up Gary. He later moved to Oregon, and his silence about Gary's absence before his death in 1997 made things even more mysterious. As Gary's life story ended, his family's mixed feelings came out, and they mourned again. They were now ready to move on. Detectives, meanwhile, let out a sigh of relief when they finally solved this case. Destiny Pittman. On February 7, 2013, around 9:30 p.m., a young woman named Destiny Renee Pittman, who was only 21, was shot and killed in her own home on James Drive in Kokomo, Indiana. The case mysteriously went cold, and there were no suspects to give it any momentum. However, something new has happened that has brought the issue back into the public eye. An unsolved case that went on for 10 years and a long-awaited success are all part of this scary story. How could Destiny have died? This violent act happened at random, or was the home attack planned? People think Kokomo is a good place to live because it is generally quiet and has 9 lower crime rates than the national average. Many people also love the city for its parks and ancient sites. James Drive is in the middle of Kokomo. This close-knit area is known for its friendly people and shared laughter. Sadly, this was not the case on the terrible night of February 7, 2013. Destiny Renee Pittman was born on January 9, 1992, to Carla McCombs and Melvin Douglas Jr., who loved her very much. Everyone around her was happy because she was always happy. She wanted to become a model and make a good life for herself in the future. People who knew her said she was beautiful, kind, and full of life. Destiny Pittman, then 21 years old, was about to start a great life after finishing from high school. It made her happy to start a journey to change her life and become a model. As a sign of her freedom and goals, Destiny was determined to settle down and pay off the house she had just bought. She loved living with her boyfriend, roommate, and the 2 kids of her roommate. Her mother said that the 2 pit bulls and the chihuahua she had were more than just house pets. Destiny and her family and friends did not know that such a horrible thing would happen to them and change the course of their lives forever. The events that led up to the terrible event seemed normal. On the evening of February 7, 2013, Destiny was at home with her boyfriend, her roommate, and their 2 kids. Suddenly, 2 people came up to their house. Around 9:25 p.m., they began banging on the door loudly. We heard loud shots and a big boom soon after Pittman opened it. At that very moment, chaos broke out, and the whole house shook with the sound of a gunshot. The bullet that killed Destiny in the chest put out the bright spirit that made people's lives better. People in the neighborhood heard the gunshot, which scared them into getting help. Destiny's roommate frantically called the police while she was hiding with her 2 kids. The close-knit community was shocked when they found out that Destiny's life had been taken in such a pointless act of violence. Around 9:40 p.m., police officers got to the crime scene on James Drive, not long after getting the emergency call. Their discovery revealed Destiny lying in the hallway, her chest shot. The bullet went right through her and through the hallway wall. Feeling terrible about losing such a lively and loving young woman, her boyfriend and roommate started to talk about what happened during the incident. They also said that when Pittman approached the intruders, they hid with the kids. At the crime scene, detectives found a bullet wound in the victim's chest and a .40 caliber gun casing. At first, they thought it was an attack of the home. Based on what witnesses said, 2 armed suspects broke into the house, looking for cash before Pittman confronted them. At first, the cops thought it was just a random incident. The roommate also told the cops that the intruders were African-American because of the way they spoke and the tone of their voice. As part of their investigation, the cops asked Destiny's boyfriend more questions, and he finally admitted something shocking. Together with Destiny, he had been in the weed business. Even so, Destiny quit the business after getting a handsome inheritance just a few days before the thieves broke into their house. Apparently, he moved a bag of weed and more than $2,000 to another place. Now, the police have come up with a theory. The intruders may have gone after the two people because they were carrying drugs and cash. This became the focus of their investigation as they looked for any connections or people who might have known about Destiny and her boyfriend's illegal actions. The Kokomo Police Department tried very hard, but they could not find much solid proof linking any suspects to the crime. Drugs and money were involved in the first theft, which gave the investigation some direction but did not give them any good leads or supporting evidence. Detectives did not have many choices because there were no witnesses or forensic evidence to help them find the criminals. Teresa Galloway, captain of the Kokomo Police Department, also voiced her worries, saying that people have not been telling the truth about the case. A number of people who know what happened are not telling the cops what they know. About 2 years later, the only thing that was known to the public was that Destiny's roommate and her boyfriend were working with the police and giving them all the information they needed. However, in the end, the case went cold. As time went on, so did dreams for a breakthrough. This made the police more and angrier, and Destiny Pittman's family and friends were still having a hard time dealing with the tragedy and the unanswered questions that had been bothering them. Carla Pittman McCombs held on to hope and longed for her daughter to get justice. However, as time went on, the small bit of hope began to fade. She cried, "Nothing seems right." The Pittman family, friends, and loved ones got help from people in the neighborhood as they grieved and longed for peace. Many people, including Destiny's close friend Kelsey Crow, wished that the person who did it would feel so guilty that they would finally find the strength to come forward. However, as the days, weeks, and months went by, hope almost died out totally. Destiny's dad, Junior Douglas, had his own problems and was upset that the case was not moving forward. Douglas held on to a spark of hope despite the problems he faced every day and his falling confidence. He asked the people who were responsible to come forward, saying that they would not want their own children to go through such a terrible fate. It had been almost 10 years since Destiny Pittman's murder, and no one had been able to solve the case. It was a problem for her family, friends, and the whole town of Kokomo. As the years went by, hope began to fade, and leads that were once hot turned cold. Behind the scenes, though, agents worked hard to bring Destiny justice back to life. When an unlikely phone call came in December 2022, it was the first sign of hope. Someone who had been reading the news releases for years felt like they had to say something. They thought that a drug deal was the reason for the breaking that killed Destiny. This new information brought the case to life and made a key lead that had not been there for a while. Court records show that the suspects were two brothers, Joey McCartney and Jesse McCartney. This person said that Jesse had asked them to do something that turned out to be inside the house. The person picked them up in his white Jeep Cherokee and drove them to Pittman's house. The person told the other person to stay in the car while he put on black leather gloves and walked up to Pittman's front door with a gun. Joey went inside with his brother after joining him. The person heard a big boom while still in the car. Soon after both brothers ran out of the house, both people were excited when they got back into the car because they had won a large amount of money. People also did not say who made the call for years, but it turned out to be a woman who knew the suspects from before. She told the truth because the case had caused her a lot of pain and guilt. The person also said that Jesse had sold the burglary tools and the getaway car. The Kokomo Police Department finally got arrest warrants for Joey and Jesse McCartney soon after the crime. As more evidence and witness statements came in, justice began to work for Destiny Pittman, and the case that seemed hopeless at first got new momentum. The boys were each charged with murder, burglary causing bodily harm, and planning to commit burglary. They were all also charged with breaking and entering. You could find these charges in public court records. Court records indicate that Jesse faced charges for committing a class of felony by engaging in robbery, resulting in physical harm. Additionally, he was charged with possessing cocaine and marijuana. The long-awaited day of judgment for those who killed Destiny Pittman came quickly after the woman's return on March 1, 2023. Police quickly arrested Joey McCartney at his home in Grand Kentucky. 2 hours later, They arrested Jesse McCartney at his home in Kokomo. After years of pain and fear, the McCartney brothers had to take responsibility for their horrible acts now that they were in jail. The fact that Destiny's family knew justice was close finally made them feel better. The police in Kokomo helped the Pittman family as they went through the legal system. The town had been upset about the unsolved murder before. Now everyone was looking forward to the hearing and what would happen next. The trial and court processes for Destiny Pittman's murder were the next important step toward justice. Jesse McCartney and Joey McCartney both had their first trials. On March 9, 2023, as the case went on, Jesse McCartney went to court and pleaded not guilty. The judge then told the police to keep him in jail without bond. Joey McCartney went to court for the first time on March 10. The judge entered a not guilty plea for him. He also got a jail sentence without a bond. The trial started in August 2023, so the prosecutors had plenty of time to make their case. The arrest of Joey and Jesse McCartney gave Destiny Pittman's mourning family strange kind of peace. The news of the arrest made people feel a wide range of feelings after years of pain and unanswered questions. Even though the arrest did not bring their loved one back, it did bring some justice and give them a glimpse of relief, sadness, and new hope. Christina Castillione. On March 19, 1983, Christina Castillione went missing on a snowy night in Livingston County, Michigan. The story is very strange and hard to understand. Her body was found in a remote wooded area close to her house 10 days after she went missing. The case went cold for 40 years. After that, progress in DNA technology made it possible for a big change to happen. The crime went unsolved for 40 years, leaving her family and friends with many unanswered questions. What kind of person could have done such a horrible act of violence? For what reason did justice seem to escape this broken family for such a long time? Livingston County is a lovely spot all around. The 2022 census says that this county covers 585 square miles and has about 196,000 people living in it. It is a thriving town with both city and country parts. People love it because of how beautiful it is, and because there are so many things to do outside, like hikes, camping, and fishing. In addition, the rate of serious crime in this area is about 10.8 per 1,000 people, which is much lower than the national average. Sadly, the accident happened in this peaceful place, leaving a puzzle that would bother people in the area for years. Chris and Beatrice Castillione had a daughter named Christina Lynn and a daughter named Christina Lynn Castillione on March 8, 1964. Christina grew up in Redford, Michigan, with her older sister Anna. They lived in a happy and content home. After Christina graduated from Redford Union High School, she played games like basketball and volleyball and showed how good she was at them. People also thought she was shy and thought a lot about herself, and she often chose to work alone instead of going out with other people. However, Christina's honest and kind personality won over everyone, leaving a lasting impact on both friends and strangers. Christina felt hopeful at the start of 1983. She was 19 years old and deeply in love with Christopher Lindsay, who was 25 years old. She had also just started working as a research clerk at the Detroit Edison Company, a job she liked. Christina was excited about the idea of going on a new trip after high school, and she thought about joining the Army and leaving her home. She got ready to join the Army and talked to a recruiter, which was a brave step toward the future she wanted. She had no idea that her hopes for a happy life and many chances would be sadly dashed, leaving her family and friends to deal with the unbearable loss. The night of Saturday, March 19, 1983, experienced extremely low temperatures. Christina did not work today, so she could do some things around the house and hang out with her boyfriend Christopher Lindsay. They said goodbye around noon and agreed to meet again later that night. However, their plans to go on a date never came together. She went back to her parents' house on MacArthur Road around 2 p.m. and took a nap. Christina was excited to go out with her boyfriend that night, her mother said. Not hearing from him by 7:30 p.m., though, made her antsy, so she set out to find him. She started by going to her boyfriend's house. His sister told her that he was not there when she got there. After that, she went to a friend's house a mile down 5 Mile Road. Her partner was not at her friend's house either. Christina stayed with her friend for a while and watched TV together before going home. She went everywhere on foot because she had just a week before sold her favorite red Mustang because of high insurance costs. Sadly, she never come back. When Christina's parents tried to call her the next day, but couldn't, their worries grew. After trying every way to get in touch with her, Christina's mother, Beatrice, called the Redford Police Department around noon on March 21, 1983, to say that her daughter was missing. After Christina's mother called the police, they started a full search right away. Investigators talked to family members, friends, and other people they knew to try to figure out what happened before she disappeared. Christina's boyfriend told the police that he saw her standing outside of the Kingsborough Party Store on the 5 Mile Wayside in Redford Township at 7:30 p.m. on March 19, 1983. Even though he was in a car with his friends at the time, he chose not to stop and pick her up because he knew Christina did not like the people he was with. Christopher parked the car a few meters away from the store and got out to wait for Christina to walk by. He went to look for her when she did not show up and said he had looked for her for a long time. He called her house because he was worried about her safety, but no one answered. Christopher was worried, but he did not tell Christina's parents because he did not want to make them mad. For more information, the cops put out pictures of the missing girl and talked to a number of other people. Penny Mares, who calls herself a psychic, finally gave them a tip. Christina's body might be in the trash in Inkster. The police carefully looked through the nearby trash cans and garbage, but they could not find anything. Some people did not agree with the police using a psychic assistant, but Detective John Crete defended it and said it showed how committed they were to following every lead in their case. The search for Christina continued beyond the borders of Redford, leaving both the cops and the people who lived there looking for answers. A man said he found human remains while hunting deer in the Oak Grove State Game area in Deerfield Township, which is more than 45 miles from her town. After 10 unbearably long days of looking, agents from the Redford Police Department went to the scene right 78 away to do an investigation. They found the body half buried in the ground in a remote forest area where Fawcett and Fisher roads meet. According to the police, the body was that of Christina Castillione, who 19 years old was. Investigators looked at the scene and saw that Christina's body had been put in the woods area before it snowed. When the snow started to melt, it showed her body. The police found her near a group of trees with a few inches of snow covering some of her. There will be an autopsy on the body. What they found was shocking. Christina had been hurt and then suffocated to death. There was also DNA from a man on her body that had not been recognized. This gave people hope that new developments in DNA technology could help catch the killer. At first, the police were focusing on Christina's boyfriend and his friends, but when they could not find any proof linking them to the crime, they were finally cleared. Instead, the evidence suggested that an unknown person who had then done the horrible thing had picked up Christina. In Livingston County, violent crimes were not popular, but there was a strange pattern that kept showing up. 10 bodies were found on state-owned land in the county between 1978 and 1983, which led to rumors of a possible serial killer in the area. It was also thought that the man who found Christina's body was guilty. He did not show up for the planned lie detector test and kept changing his story. However, there was no clear proof that he did it, and he did not have a criminal record. Because of this, the man was not arrested. Even with these hints, the cops' search for the person who killed Christina Castillione began to lose steam, and they ran out of new paths to take. The scary thought that the criminal was still on the loose weighed heavily on the people who lived in Livingston County. As media attention in the case decreased, it slowly fell off the front pages. In the end, the case went cold. It looked like things might get better when DNA technology came out in 2000. Detectives were able to make a male DNA analysis with the help of the information they got at the crime scene. In order to find a match that would help them find the killer, they put the DNA profile into CODIS, the country's criminal justice database. Unfortunately, no matter how hard they looked, they could not find anything. The case went cold again. Even though things went wrong, Christina's parents did not let the memory of their beloved daughter fade. Instead, they held on to the hope that justice would win in the end. As the years went by, they became even more determined, and they longed for the case to be over in some way. For 20 years, no one knew anything about the case. After this, though, there was another spark of hope in 2022. Together with a group of experienced officers, the Livingston County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Squad set out to solve this case. The first thing they did was ask for money so that they could use the suspect DNA samples from 1983 to do more advanced DNA tests. With help from the Season of Justice, a good nonprofit that pays DNA tests on unsolved cold cases, they were able to get the money they needed. Season of Justice gives money to police departments across the country for advanced testing. This helps with the investigation of murders, assaults, and other crimes where the body of the victim or the criminal is still unknown, and DNA testing is the only way to find out who did it. The DNA samples were sent to Other AM Incorporated, a famous forensic lab in Texas that has solved a number of cold cases in the past, after they were approved and given the money. According to DNA from the unnamed suspect, a group of researchers in Other used a forensic-grade genome sequencing method to make a full genealogy profile. After looking for matches against the description on family tree websites and genealogical databases, they found a strong suspect. 3 different tests that compared DNA from different members of the Sami family proved that the suspect was who they said they were. Finding out that the unknown male suspect was actually Charles David Shaw was the long-awaited end to the cold case. Detectives carefully traced the suspect's family tree by finding single matches in DNA genealogy databases. This led them to the suspect's live uncle in the end. Then, by following the links to Charles Shaw, they made a family tree. Finally, there was a success in 2023 when the truth came out. Investigators' never-ending work proved that Charles David Shaw was the person who killed Christina Castillione. Not much is known about Shaw's early life, but what his family and the Livingston County Sheriff's Office did say was troubling. People said that Charles Shaw was a sex addict who had problems with his mental health and his gender identity. There had always been trouble between Shaw and the cops. The Livonia Police Department first arrested him in 1973 on charges of breaking and entering. Then, in 1977, he was suspected of having drugs, attempted kidnapping of a woman in the Fowlerville McDonald's parking lot in 1980. One got him nabbed. His punishment for this crime was 2 weeks in jail and a period of probation. His other arrest was in 1982 for taking women's shoes from a card. Investigators could not find any links between Christina and Shaw that would have given them a reason to target her. Nevertheless, they found that Shaw had been living in Livonia for a while at the time of the murder and was only 5 kilometers from where Christina went missing. The investigation showed that he had a hard personal life with problems with drugs and mental illness that seemed to be linked to his illegal behavior. These new details showed that Charles Shaw was a complicated and troubled person who fought inner demons while doing horrible things. Detectives said that Shaw died of asphyxiation by accident just 8 months after Christina was killed. He was 26 years old. This made it impossible to bring him to justice, which was sad. In February 2023, Livingston County Sheriff Mike Murphy held a news conference to thank the Shaw family for their help with the investigation. Working together was very important in figuring out that Charles Shaw was the one who killed Christina. Shaw's wife told police important details about him before he died. She said that he planned to change his gender and was looking for help with the process. She also said that he was a criminal, which shed more light on Shaw's complicated past. Anna Castillione, Christina's sister and the only family member still alive, showed her happiness when the case was over. Anna worked hard to bring attention to the problem and never gave up hope. In 2014, she even talked to the media about her sister. She said she thought about her every day. Finding Christina's killer was a relief for Anna after 40 years of guessing. Genetic history and genome sequencing that are good enough for use in court were what solved the case. Sergeant Matt Young of the Livingston County Sheriff's Office talked about how happy he was that they had solved a murder case that happened 40 years ago. Now, the police hope that genetic DNA findings will help other families of violent crime victims get closure. It is also the full intention of the Livingston County Cold Case Unit to keep looking into any other unexplained murder cases. Pamela Lynn Conyers. On October 16, 1970, a 16-year-old Pamela Lynn Conyers went shopping at the Herondale Mall to get some food. For her, the mall would be the last place she ever went because she had no idea what would happen next. Pamela Lynn never got back home, which caused her family and the whole neighborhood to be in a worry for days. After 4 days, her body was found in the woods with marks around her neck from being strangled. Detectives would have to wait 50 years to finally figure out what happened to her. What did she do to deserve that? Why did it take over 50 years for police to solve her case? One of the best places to live in Maryland is in Anne Arundel County. Arundel is a medium-sized town with just over 580,000 people living in it. Most of them own their own homes. Great schools and a low poverty rate make the county a peaceful place to live where you would want to start a family. People who live in the area sometimes go to the leisure parks for picnics or to relax after a long day. There was a sudden break in the peace in Arundel on the night of October 12, 1970. Pamela Lynn Conyers was born in Maryland on January 13, 1954, in Anne Arundel County. These people had only one child. She was their only child. He was very liked, just like most only children. Not only did her family love her, but also so did her friends and other people she knew. Mela was fun to be around because she was eager to live and see the world. She also acted like any other 16-year-old, taking everything in stride. People were interested in Pamela Lynn because of her smile and sense of style. Many people liked and hung out with Pamela Lynn in school. She was a good student at Maryland's Glen Burnie High School, which is a public school. Pamela could also dance very well and joined the dance club at her school. Pamela Conyers wanted to be a skilled dancer and maybe even open her own dance school for kids, even though she did not know because she grew up as an only child with 2 loving parents. She had no trouble making friends because she was kind and honest, always sharing her thoughts as they came to her, sometimes even too much. Pamela liked sports and dancing the most. The 16-year-old went to many pep events and used them as chances to show off her dancing skills. No one knew that her bright smile would go away for good one day. Every year, around the last 4 months, schools planned events to get students excited about sports and give them something to look forward to. The October 1970 gathering at Glen Burnie High School was coming up, and Pamela Conyers was in a great mood. She had been going to all of the school's rehearsals up until that point, especially the dance rehearsals for the pep parade. Mela went to the pep rally on October 16th, which was his birthday. He went back home after having fun with her friends and other kids. In the evening, she chose to go shopping, so she borrowed her folks' 1960 7 Dodge Monaco and drove to Glen Burnie, Maryland's Arundel Mall. She never got back home, though. Our folks started to worry right away when she did not come home that night. They went to the mall because she said she would, but she was not there. Asking people nearby if they had seen her, everyone said the saw me thing. She had left the mall. Her family called the cops and told them what happened when they could no longer continue the search on their own because they kept running into dead ends. After telling the cops what happened, they had to wait a few hours to make sure she did not come home. Police knew it was a big deal when they heard nothing from her for several hours. Since Pamela did not come back, the cops began searching the whole town. The police questioned her parents to find out if she was having any problems at home or with her mental health. Her parents told the police that she got along well with them and did not seem unhappy. There was no sign of her or her car anywhere near the Herondale Mall a few hours after her parents called the cops. This made them even more worried. Because they were so sure their daughter had not run away, they did not know what could have happened to her. Things were fine for Mela with her family and friends. Because she was not sad, there was nothing that could have made her run. They looked for Mela for 3 days, but could not find her. Finally, on October 19, 1970, they found her car stopped in the woods outside of Millersville, 2 hours from her town. There was no sign of Mela, though. With the search group now having the car, it looked like Mela Conyers was no longer out of reach, and they were sure she would be close by. Not long after, all of those dreams collapsed. On October 20th, the police found Mela 24 hours after they found the car. She was dead and had been left behind in the woods outside of Millersville, Maryland. She was somewhere in the middle of Maryland Route 177, which went through Millerville and had lanes going east and west. Everyone in Anne Arundel was shocked when Mela died because they thought the search would turn up good news. When the police found Mela, they saw marks on her neck that looked like she had been strangled. They also found that she had been beaten. There were no traces, hints, leads, or anything else that would have made it easy to solve the case. The cops were able to collect and store some evidence and foreign DNA, but they could not do any more tests because there was not any high-tech equipment available at the time of the murder. Once they had Mela's body, they searched the area for signs about what might have happened at about the time that Mela went missing and died. The bodies of 3 other women were found not far from where Mela's body was found. Police thought that all of the cases were linked. Sister Kathy's body was the first one found. She was a nun sister and taught at Archbishop Keel High School in Baltimore. Her lifeless body was found in a garbage dump on November 7, 1969, almost a year before Mela. Some of the girls' sister Kathy taught at the school told her before she died that their priest, Reverend Joseph Maskell, had abused them. The cops thought that he killed Sister Kathy by hitting her in the head with something hard. The other 2 women, Joyce Maliki and Grace Montang, also went missing around the Sami time Pamela did. The cops found their bodies but no signs of the people who killed them. The investigation was stuck. The death of Mela slowly turned into a cold case. Because there was no technology that could help with the probe, it was put with other unsolved crimes, and her body was buried. The officers did not know what to do and had no chance of solving the case. Many people had forgotten about Mela Lynn Conyers, but her family and the police never forgot about her case. As technology got better, the case was looked into again in 2017. After confirming the details of Mela Lynn Conyers' case, the Maryland Police Department held a press meeting so that everyone could get the news. Lieutenant Jackie Davies began the live meeting by speaking about how much she loved Mela Lynn Conyers. She talked about how much she loved her teenage years, until someone sadly and selfishly took him or her away. Families and friends of Mela, we hope that today's news brings them at least some peace and comfort in knowing who killed her. As she continued the moving speech she had written in honor of Mela, the room fell quiet. According to Lieutenant Yankee, Mela was never forgotten and will never be forgotten. It had been over 50 years since the case had been open, but she still praised the officers for their hard work. Detective Tom Sobakansky, who was in charge of the case for the FBI, then spoke. He began his speech by saying that he was happy to say that Mela Lynn Conyers could now get justice. He said in his statement, "We are pleased to announce a measure of justice for Mela Lynn Conyers." The detective then talked about the case. He said, Mela was a depressed 16-year-old who went shopping at the mall. She was brutally killed. Now, after 50 years, the FBI and investigative genealogy have been able to identify the man who killed Mela. After that, he talked briefly about how to do research genealogy. According to the detective, FBI agents only used research genealogy after they had tried all other options. Since Mela's murder happened in 1970, there were not many ways for police to find the killer. Detectives used DNA from the crime scene to make a profile of the suspect and then matched that profile with information from public sources to find the suspect's family. Detective Tom, however, said that even though they had found the suspect and his family, the case was still going on. Even so, he told the people watching that police officers never forget about victims. To give the families of those who died a feeling of justice, they would do anything. After the killer of Mela became known, her family would not take calls and asked people to be respectful of their privacy during this time. A local news station, Wall, was able to talk to Michael Golden, one of Mela's friends. Their natural friendliness drew him to her at the pep gathering, where they met. When asked how he felt about the case, he said, "This case has haunted me for almost 53 years. I remember exactly when Pamela went missing. That Monday morning I had trigonometry class with her, and seeing her empty desk really brought it home. Made it real. I still mourn her death. I got old. She didn't. She will always be 16. Detectives think that other people may have had something to do with Mela's death, so they could not say too much to keep the case's purity. A search is still going on, and anyone with information that could help move the case forward is welcome to give it. Investigators also said that Mela and Forrest Clyde Willia Miss did not know each other before she died, which means that the crime was not done by a friend or acquaintance. Forrest Clyde Willia, Mrs. asked to be burned before he died. His family did what he asked in his will and burned his body. Therefore, the cops only had an old picture of him from the 1970 when he was arrested. They still cannot get in touch with his family because he has not been arrested, and Pamela's family has not said anything. No one knows if they found the peace of mind they needed to begin healing from the death of a loved one. We hope they were able to find peace. Patricia Joseph. This is a story of Patricia Joseph, which almost brought down the Siskiyou District Attorney's Office. Where did Patricia Joseph go? What were her attackers' names, and why did they do it? The only people living in Fort Jones are 647. It is a small town in North California's Siskiyou County. There is only one shopping area in this town, and it is full of restaurants and shops. Fort Jones is a great place to raise a family, even though it is not very big. The town is close-knit, and the schools are good. It has a mix of suburban and rural feel, and it is almost like a town. However, there is 15 violent crime in this town, and Patricia Joseph's case was the one that really shocked the whole county. Patty was Patricia Joseph's last name. She was born in California on June 25, 1949. Her 3 children, Allison, Steve, and Julie, loved her very much because she was a caring and loving mother. As a mother and a woman with a strong sense of right and wrong, she never stopped to help her kids when they were in trouble. During hard times, she did not just stand up for her kids. She also did for her friends and their kids, making sure that no child felt left out in the neighborhood. Patricia loved the people in her town, but she loved kids even more. The babies loved her too. For some, she was like a godmother, and for others, she was like a grandma. She quickly went to her son's house with gifts for the baby when he had his first child. The Country Time Cafe was Patricia Joseph's diner in Fort Jones. It was on Main Street. People used to love eating there because it had some of the best food in the area. Now there is a painting over it. It was not just the tasty food that brought people to the restaurant, though. Patricia's attitude and commitment to making sure her customers were happy were out of this world. There were only good things said about her. Some families ate there every day. She was a single mom and had to make ends meet, so Patricia had another job as a bush trimmer for a pot farm. Her job was important to her because it gave her something to do when she did not want to be alone all day at home, since her kids were married and living on their own. She did her part of the deal every time, even though she was not making a lot of money at this job. In addition, she was devoted and worked hard. She always looked out for her boss and coworkers and made sure that everyone around her was happy. People who knew her were shocked when they learned they might never see her again. She was a fun and lovely person to be around. She had just gotten home from work on July 15, 2005. She had to deal with a lot of sales and customers all day, so she closed earlier than usual to get some rest. She closed to take a break first so she could be at her best. When she chose to take a break first so she could be at her best when she got there. However, while she was sleeping, someone broke into her house and took her. Later that day, a family member of Patricia called her but did not get an answer. Patricia Joseph never hung up the phone, even when she was tired, which made her family worry. When they got to her house, they were surprised to see that the door was not locked. Patricia lived alone, so she knew that her doors should be locked. In addition, seeing it in that state made their hearts beat faster. Her family came home and saw her phone, which they had been calling. They started to look for her all over the house while calling her name and hoped to hear back. However, there was not any. Before they thought the worst, they asked her friends if they had seen her. The last thing they remembered seeing her do was walk into the house after work that day. They saw her leave the house, but not her. At this point, Patricia Joseph's family found out that she was lost. They called the police right away and said she was lost. When officers heard that Patricia was not there, they rushed to her house. Patricia was in her late 50s and had lived a happy life. It was already unlikely that she would kill herself or leave the house she lived in by herself. As the police searched the house for hints, they found a lot of foreign DNA, but they could not figure out whom it belonged to. They also found some of the things she had left behind. The Willits News reports that Patricia Joseph left her duplex apartment without taking her glasses, contacts, purse, or cell phone. Patricia had bad eyesight, so she could never leave the house without her glasses or contacts. The cops found Patricia's false teeth on the floor in the hallway of the house. Following this piece of evidence, they believed it might have been a break-in and that people demanding a fee were most likely holding her hostage. However, when they got to her room, they saw blood on the bed. At this point, things were getting serious since they only had those two leads to work with. The study was going to be hard to keep going since they did not know where Patricia was. The police did not know if she was living, dead, or kidnapped because her family had not received any calls demanding a ransom. On July 18, 2005, 3 days after Patricia went missing, some swimmers were on the Klamath River when they saw something strange in the water. As they got closer, they saw a woman who was only partly dressed. They called the police right away to tell them what they saw. As soon as the police heard the call, they ran to the Klamath River to get the body. To their horror, it was Patricia Joseph, who was naked and swollen. The person who beat her badly had strangled her, leaving cuts on her neck. Later, affiliation and blunt force injuries were named as the causes of her death. The police told Patricia's family that they had found her, but it was not what they were hoping for because she was already dead. The police began their investigation while her family was in sadness. There was not any progress in their investigation. Even with this new knowledge, the case slowly went cold because the detectives did not have any solid leads to follow up on. The cops did not look into the case again until 2010. They started to look through the evidence to see who could have killed her. They found that a lot of the DNA evidence from her house from the day of the crime went to one person, the owner of the marijuana farm where she trimmed. Some witnesses who were too scared to speak out when the event happened in 2005 came forward anonymously to support the police's suspicions. His name was Philip Willie Fraze, and the cops had seen him before. A warrant for his arrest was issued right away, but he was already going to court for the murder of 49-year-old Stephen Richard Schmidt before the warrant was issued. A blow to the head killed Stephen, who also worked on Philip's pot farm. Patricia Joseph died from the same cause. When his friends saw Philip driving Stephen's car off Stephen's property while wearing rubber gloves, they thought something was wrong. When they asked him where Stephen was, he said he had left. Based on what Stephen's friends said, and the fact that the missing person lived in the house, the cops got a warrant to search it around the end of January 2010. Philip said there was nothing in his house, though. The cops searched Philip's house and found Stephen Schmidt's body in his yard. It was tied to a tree and hidden under some branches, which is how the cadaver dogs found it. Philip was found guilty of killing the man. Additionally, they discovered some of Stephen's things left behind in front of an elk company. Philip Willie Fraze finally accepted that he killed Stephen Schmidt and was given a 3-year prison sentence at the Mendocino County Jail. The cops thought he killed Stephen Schmidt after a fight about Schmidt's marijuana business. They put together the pieces and concluded that Philip was probably also responsible for Patricia's death since Stephen had died from direct force trauma like Patricia and they did business together. After serving his 3-year sentence, Philip was supposed to be moved from the Mendocino County Jail to the Siskiyou County Jail. However, in 2012, the Siskiyou County District Attorney revoked the warrant, saying that the detectives did not have enough proof to make the arrest. Kirk Andrus, the district attorney, said that more research had to be done before Fraze could be charged. Stephen, Patricia's oldest son, told the Daily News, "My family is disappointed with the outcome of the proceedings, but we understand the district attorney's position. I appreciate the work that the Siskiyou County Sheriff's Office is doing, and I know they are pursuing the case as aggressively as they can." The police worked hard on the case for 5 years and thought they had found the killer, but they soon realized they did not have enough proof. They had to go back to the investigation board, and the case went cold again very quickly. Jeremiah LaRue, the sheriff of Siskiyou County, set up a cold case and forensics evidence team to help major crimes officers with their investigation by the beginning of 2021. The team finally got to Patricia's case after a long time. They started to look through the case file. They did not ask witnesses. Instead, they checked the DNA evidence that was already there when Patricia was found floating in the Klamath River in 2005 on top of it. Before, technology was not advanced enough to find the criminal, but with the help of new technology, detectives sent the physical proof they had gathered on the day of the crime to a lab. They found a match when they looked through the forensic proof in their database. However, it turned out that 2 people killed Patricia Joseph, not just one. However, the cops did not show any more proof to back up their conclusions. They still do not know who the other person was, but Philip Willie Fraze, who was her boss at the marijuana grow, was the main suspect. He was born in 1948, somewhere in California. His name is Philip Willie Fraze. He was a bad kid who always broke the rules his parents set for him. Because his parents were not wealthy, he did not have a fancy or even a happy childhood. Seeing this made him decide to make money no matter what. That he started a weed farm as an adult should not be a surprise. He lived in Siskiyou County and ran into trouble with the law for the first time in 1997. In 1997, Philip Willie Fraze started a marijuana farm in California that was against the law. In this state, it was not allowed to grow or sell marijuana until 2016, but Philip was way ahead of his time. However, it looked like someone told the cops about Philip. They went to his illegal marijuana farm and found evidence against him. They made a mistake by letting him go free while he waited his hearing, because he broke into someone's house and was caught at the same time. The case against him went to court, but there was no conviction because the prosecutors did not have enough proof to prove burglary. His second trial later found him not guilty and freed him. It is because Philip Willie Fraze did not think about himself or how his actions affected other people that he continued to grow and sell marijuana. Besides selling weed, he hired people to work on his farm and make more money. He called them business partners, but he would stop calling them that when he thought they were up to no good or got tired of them. Philip was always thinking about making money, which made him do crazy things and get his hands dirty from time to time. He never got married or had kids. When police sent the forensic evidence from Patricia Joseph's home and the place where her body was found to a lab, they were able to find a match in their database. When they found out that Philip Willie Fraze killed her, things began to make sense. Patrick Joseph began working for Philip Willie Price around 2004, which is a year before she disappeared. Initially, there was no link between Philip and her disappearance, so police did not ask him. However, when new proof came out in 2010 linking him to her death, he said he had never seen her. Philip went to Mendocino County soon after Patricia's death in 2005 and continued to grow marijuana there. The cops thought that his move in 2005 was an attempt to get away after he had committed a terrible crime in Siskiyou County. He hired a new worker, Stephen Schmidt, and even put him up on his new farm in Mendocino County. Nevertheless, after a fight over money and a pound of pot, Philip killed Stephen by hitting the back of the head with a lead pipe. Their search for proof connecting Stephen's death to Patricia's death failed. Detectives who were in charge of the case in 2021 confirmed that he was also the one who killed Patricia with a blow to the head. Putting the puzzle pieces together led them to strong forensic proof that Philip Willie Fraze was responsible for kidnapping and killing Patricia Joseph. There was a warrant out for his arrest, but he hid. No matter what the cops did, they could not find him, and because he did not have any family member they could call, their investigation got harder. On February 6, 2023, they finally made progress when they found proof that he was hiding in Eureka, California. For killing Patricia Joseph, Philip Willie Fraze, who is now 75 years old, was caught in Eureka, California. Philip's criminal hearing began right away in the Siskiyou County Supreme Court. They arrested him 2 days before he went to court on February 8, 2023, to hear the decision. Looking at the judge as he did not care about what was going to happen, he did not seem upset or threatened in court. The judges could have thought that the old man in front of them was not probably guilty of the crime if they had not seen the evidence. Judge looked at a lot of evidence and decided that Philip Willie Fraze was guilty of all the charges brought against him. Philip's lawyer was not able to make a good case for him either. The Siskiyou County Jail set a $2 million bail for him and put him back in jail. Authorities have set up a $2,500 prize for anyone who can help them find his partner. Philip Willie Fraze was first charged with killing Patricia Joseph in 2010, which made her family feel better. However, in 2012, the warrant was lifted and he was free to go. The officer said they knew there was a dangerous killer on the loose, but they were still going to look into it. It broke Patricia's son's heart, but he kept his dreams up and even made a Facebook page to honor his mother. Patricia's family felt a little better after his second arrest in 2023. They wrote on Facebook, "We miss you like crazy." After he was caught, they kept looking for information about the second suspect in Patricia Joseph's murder. The world does not know anything about Philip Willie Fraze's family, so they did not say anything. He will stay in jail if he cannot pay the $2 million bail. Sheriff LaRue of Siskiyou County expressed contentment with the cold case team's progress in Stephanie Joseph's case. In his statement, he noted that the arrest had resulted from the determination of the investigators and emphasized their unwavering commitment to pursuing justice for victims of violent crimes and their families. He also stressed that the cold case team would continue to dedicate themselves to these cases. Sheriff LaRue commended all those involved in the investigation and thanked the district attorney's office for their assistance. He conveyed sympathy to Patricia's family and expressed hope that the arrest would initiate a path toward closure and healing. One of the kayakers who discovered Patricia Joseph's body, Daniel Fleary, shared his thoughts, saying, "I had believed this case had been shelved. The day I found her in the river remains one of the most astonishing experiences of my life. I'm thankful for having been present during your discovery, and I'm delighted to see that the pursuit of justice for your family continues. May you find solace, and may Patricia watch over Siskiyou County from above." Although Patty's family and friends can never be reunited with her, the arrest provided them with a degree of closure. We hope they find comfort in dealing with their loss. Renee Sweeney. On January 27, 1998, Renee Sweeney, a 23-year-old student from Sudbury, Canada, was tragically killed by more than 30 stab wounds. The killer left behind a lot of evidence when they ran away because everyone expected them to do so. Nevertheless, the case stayed open for 20 years until 2018, when new information helped figure out who the killer was. The victim's family waited 20 years for justice. The sudden and sad death of a young woman with many potential makes you wonder what could have caused someone to do such a violent and crazy thing. Did she know the person who killed her? Our case takes us to Sudbury, Canada, a city that has a unique mix of culture, history, and fun things to do. Sudbury is famous for its lively arts and culture scene. It has many museums and galleries that bring the history and customs of the city to life. However, no place is very safe, even if it has a safe reputation. On a terrible day in January 1998, a terrible crime broke the peace in Sudbury. Someone stabbed and killed a 23-year-old student who worked at an adult-only video shop, shocking everyone in the area. Let us learn about the subject and what took place that day. Renee Sweeney was born in 1975 in the middle of Sudbury, Ontario. She is a lively and driven person. One thing that is known about her early life is that she became close with her younger sister, Kim Sweeney. Family was important to Renee. and the bond she had with her sister Kim showed how much she cared about them. They fought like kids sometimes, but as they got older, they became closer. The two sisters could not stay away from each other and would often spend time together eating and laughing. Renee's life took her through the halls of Laurentian University when she was 23 years old. She was a senior there working toward her higher education. Renee had many different hobbies that she liked. Besides doing well in school, she found comfort and happiness in playing with the Sudbury Symphony Orchestra and putting her love of music into engaging songs. However, Renee was unique in more ways than just her artistic skills. Working at the adults-only video store on Paris Street was a very strange job for her. Even though the shop had a bad name, Renee was happy that it was her way of making money and that she was not doing any questionable things outside of work. However, no one knew what would happen on January 27th that would shock the whole neighborhood. On that awful January day in 1998, Sudbury, Ontario, looked like any other cold morning. The 23-year-old college student Renee Sweeney, who worked at Adults Only Video, was going about her business. The day started out like any other at the video shop, where she worked by herself in a small space with a bunch of rated movies and dovies. She had no idea that something terrible was going to happen in her life. Around 11:15 a.m., Renee's life would never be the same again. She was on the phone with a worker from another store that sells adult movies. She cut the call short and said that a customer had come into the shop. The only person she would ever talk to again is her abuser. When the guy in the ocean blue High Sierra brand jacket and Brooks brand tennis shoes walked into the store, he attacked Renee in the middle of the store and stabbed her several times. In the face of a brutal attack, Renee showed amazing strength by bravely fighting for her life. Unfortunately, her attacker was much stronger and crueler than she was, and she fell to the ground, leaving a pool of blood behind her. The person who attacked her went to the bathroom to wash his hands and face to hide the horrible things he had done. When he got back to the shop, Renee had dragged herself behind the counter and was desperately trying to call for help. He threw more punches because he was mad, and Renee died from the stab wounds she received. Before leaving, the thief took $200 from the register and some items from the store. Someone who was the first to see what happened at the adults-only video shop talked about how scary it was. Both he and his fiancée were students at Laurentian University. They had planned a normal coffee break at Country Bagel, which was perfectly located in the same strip mall on Paris Street where Renee Sweeney worked. After getting to the store at 11:30 a.m., they chose to rent an adult movie and went inside. As soon as they walked in, they felt something odd. The cash register in the back right corner was empty, and many items had been snatched from the shelves without any fuss. They were looking at a broken-down stand in the middle of the store that had DVDs and magazines on it. The witness looked over the stand and saw a horrifying sight. A man bending over someone on the floor and carrying what looked like a blue bag in his right hand. The witness saw a frightening scene of violence because there was blood all over the person who was lying on the floor. The man's actions, like quickly stuffing things into the bag, showed that he wanted to leave quickly. When the witness told the man he was there, the man ran by him without talking to him or acknowledging him. The witness was shocked and upset by what he saw and ran to the person lying on the ground, where he saw a woman who needed help badly. We wanted to help him so badly that he ran to a nearby store to tell the staff that he needed police and medical help. According to the witness's report, the event was violent and happened quickly. It showed the horrible effects of a terrible crime. Soon after, cops with tracking dogs showed up at the crime scene. He was able to get away by crossing Walford Road and the parking lot of Laurentian Hospital. To get away quickly from police, the killer ran down many neighborhood streets and across the fields of two schools, Lockerbie Composite and McLeod Public. Dogs that follow people around tracked him, but he disappeared near Caswell Drive, making the investigation more difficult. Even though the killer got away, he left important clues at the scene of the crime. The bloody footprints on the cash box and the tissue and blood under Renee's fingernails showed how bravely she fought her attacker. There was also a septic footprint of a man's size 10 Brooks sports shoe with a black stripe, which helped police narrow down the possible suspects. They stabbed her at least 35 times before they killed her in a horrible and useless act of violence. That person who killed someone may have left behind the most interesting clue, an ocean blue High Sierra jacket. It was an interesting quirk that this light jacket did not work well in Western Ontario's hard January weather. As if that was not mysterious enough, you could only get it in the U.S. at Mervyn's, a chain of shops that are pretty far from Sudbury. It was filled with a strange thing, a diaper pin. Investigators were confused because they did not know what this strange event meant. The witness said that the offender wore thin-brimmed, oval-shaped glasses and had short, messy hair on top of his head. The man's beard had grown for a few days on his face. Based on what the witness said, the police then drew a sketch of the defendant. They also told Renee's family sad news of her death. Upon learning about her sister, Renee's tragic death in a stampede, Kim expressed her ongoing anguish and the persistent questions that haunt her thoughts daily. She wondered why someone would commit such an act and why her sister became a victim. Additionally, she questioned whether the perpetrator remains at large. According to Sergeant David DeFoley, the individual responsible for the case, Renee Sweeney successfully defended herself against her attacker. DNA found under her toenails showed that she scratched the attacker several times during the fight. The attacker was fully dressed except for his face and neck, so these scratches would have been easy to see. The investigation also found disturbing evidence that someone had been bothering or following Renee around in the weeks before her said death. In the 2 weeks before the murder, she got a lot of hang-up calls at her house, which made her worry about her safety. Her new behavior made people question her even more. Most of the time, Renee parked her car on the other side of the parking lot, away from the shop. But in the week before she died, she stopped parking behind the shop and started parking right in front of it. Responding quickly to Renee Sweeney's terrible murder, the Greater Sudbury Police Department charged John Federley with first-degree murder on February 11, 1998. His only crime was that the sketch the cops made, according to witnesses, looked a lot like John Federley. But the investigation quickly found problems and the proof did not hold up. As a result, the charges were dropped, an apology was made, and Federley was freed the next day. Over the years, the study ran into problems, but the search for justice went on. By December 2, 1999, hundreds of men had voluntarily given their DNA to the Sudbury police. At that time, it was the biggest DNA collection for a single police investigation in Canadian history. Even though people kept trying, the investigation stopped going anywhere, and the hints stopped being useful. On April 30, 2003, Sudbury police made the Renee Sweeney .com webpage in order to find out more about the murder. It took years for the investigation to cool down, but the town and Renee's family are still not sure what happened. In 2017, the Sudbury Police Department made a shocking statement that gave people who have been working hard to find justice in the murder of Renee Sweeney hope. Together with Parabon Nanolabs, a cutting-edge tech business that specializes in DNA phenotyping, they released a new composite image of the criminal. This could be another step towards solving the chilling crime that had been unsolved for almost 20 years. Using Parabon Nanolabs' cutting-edge snapshot DNA phenotyping service, Greater Sudbury Police released a new picture of the Sweeney murder suspect on January 23, 2017. This new and innovative technology used DNA sample to try to guess a person's looks and ancestry. It opened the door for a new way to solve cold cases. The Snapshot DNA phenotyping service used complex algorithms to look at DNA samples from the crime scene and make a composite sketch of a possible suspect's face. The combined image gave a very good idea of how the person who did the horrible thing that shocked Sudbury and kept Renee Sweeney's family in the dark was likely to look. Based on the combined drawing, the suspect was probably a man from Northern Europe. He had pale skin, pretty blue or green eyes, and hair that was brown to blonde with freckles here and there. Eyewitness accounts led to the addition of sunglasses to the picture, which made the portrait of the possible criminal even better. This new information was a turning point in the probe. It gave people hope and made them curious. The better composite picture gave detectives a new clue, which renewed their desire to solve the long-standing mystery of Renee Sweeney's horrible murder. Detective Sergeant Bob Weston, who was in charge of the murder investigation into Renee Sweeney at the time, thanked the people for their overwhelming response to the new composite image that came out in January 2017. Before putting out the new sketch, the police had already cleared 1,800 people of suspicion and gotten 360 tips in the past year. That is down from about 300 after DNA sample or other methods ruled out about 150. Even though every tip was helpful, Detective Sergeant Weston wished people could give him more specific details. He told everyone that the killer was probably in his 40s by now, even though the composite picture shows a young guy. Detective Sergeant Weston asked people to think about people they knew in 1998 in the hopes that someone would remember important details that would help the investigation go in the right direction. Even though it had been 20 years, he was still hoping that the case would be solved and that the DNA databank would help find the criminal. This new information made the case very important, and everyone was watching the Greater Sudbury Police Service work hard. The suspect's face, which had been hidden, suddenly took on a shape. The community hoped that the suspect would be named soon, and they hoped that a name would finally put an end to a tragedy that had been plaguing Sudbury for far too long. Finally, in 2018, snapshot DNA's phenotyping showed that the killer was Robert Stephen Wright. He was 39 years old at the time. His arrest and charge of first-degree murder in the death of Renee Sweeney on December 11, 2018, put him in jail. The 20-year investigation into her murder made a big step forward with this. Wright went to school at Lockerbie Composite School. He did the wrong thing when he was 18 years old. The arrest took place at the North Bay Regional Health Center, where he worked. The trial was supposed to start on October 25, 2021, but it kept getting pushed back because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Wright's bail bids were turned down several times in 2019 and 2020. While he was in jail after being arrested in December 2018, his almost 4.5 years of custody earned him a pretrial custody credit of at least 6 years, taking into account the time he spent in jail during the pandemic and in the hospital with a dangerous COVID-19 action. In the end, the hearing started on February 21, 2023, 25 years after Sweeney's untimely death. Wright finally pleaded not guilty after years of hard work. During his hearing, he said that when he walked into the store, it was dark and quiet. As he got closer to the counter, he saw a body lying on the floor. There was something on the ground that he thought was blood, but his brain was not able to understand it yet. Afterward, he told the judge that he had moved toward the body to check the pulse rate, which was something he had learned as a Boy Scout. When he heard no heartbeat or pulse, he became scared, and seeing blood on his jacket made him even more scared. He ran away from the crime scene in a hurry, later saying it was the worst thing he had ever done. He strongly claimed that he was the one who killed Sweeney. Michael Lacey, Wright's lawyer, made a lot of counter-arguments to show that he was not guilty. He said that there was only one fair decision in this case, and that was to find Wright not guilty. Though it was not what the judges thought. After hearing evidence for 5 weeks, they thought about it for about 14 hours before March 29, 2023, when they found Wright guilty of second-degree murder. After finding Wright guilty, the jury got together again to talk about whether he should not be able to get released for 10 to 25 years. 2 members of the jury wanted the person to not be eligible for release for 20 years. 1 wanted it to be 22 years, 2 wanted it to be 23 years, and 7 wanted it to be 25 years. However, Justice Robbie Gordon said that Wright will be able to get out of jail after 12 years. Renee Sweeney's 25-year search for justice came to an end with the end of this important hearing. There was punishment for the person who did this horrible thing. The killer has been caught and will spend the rest of his life in jail, but that does not change the fact that Renee is dead because of him. Kim Sweeney, her sister, is the only family member left. Every day, Kim Sweeney feels the weight of her sister, Renee's violent death. Even though it happened years ago, the terrible event still haunts her and leaves her with questions that do not seem to have answers. The minutes, days, and weeks after hearing the terrible news are hard to remember because sadness makes it hard to tell time goes by. Because there has been no settlement, Kim and her family have had to carry a heavy load. Her mother died in November 2017, so she never got to find comfort or peace in the tragedy that happened to her oldest daughter. The saddest thing about this tragedy is probably that her own young children would never get to meet their aunt and share in the love and memories that she holds dear. As this thrilling true crime story ends, we can't stop thinking about the questions that haven't been answered. Why did they stab her to death in the first place? Did the person who hurt her know her before? What do you think about the different turns the case has taken? Leave a review and tell us what you think. Monica Lynn, Leach. On April 28, 1997, a terrible day unfolded as Monica Lynn Leach, 39, went to work at Western Financial Bank in Thousand Oaks, expecting just another normal day. It was too dark and scary for her to know that her world was about to fall apart in the worst way possible. When two armed men with fabric masks over their faces stormed into the bank, Monica knew she was going to see something even scarier. When Monica was not expecting it, one of the people handcuffing her shot her in the back of the head for no reason. It was a horrible act of violence that killed her. What scary secrets did the killer use to get what they wanted? And why did it take so long to solve the case? Thousand Oaks is a city in the northwest of Greater Los Angeles that is known for its beautiful scenery and family-friendly. The city gets its name from the many oak trees that grow in the area. It is about 15 miles from Los Angeles and 40 miles from downtown. Thousand Oaks takes pride in keeping its quiet and well-kept environment so that it can meet the needs of families. Residents of Thousand Oaks will find it hard to leave. The city is known for its stunning natural beauty, top-notch schools, and general high quality of life. With an incredibly low rate of 0.69 violent crimes per 1,000 people, Thousand Oaks is one of the safest towns in California. This number shows that the city is serious about making the neighborhood a safe and peaceful place to live. Even so, the sad case of Monica Lynn Leach shakes up the very heart of this picture-perfect town. Her sad story is a shocking contradiction that breaks the community's idea of complete safety and fills them with a deep sense of shock and sadness. Monica Lynn Leach was born on September 15, 1957, to Alfred and Elaine Cavaletto. As the middle child of their 4 children, she had a warm and religious childhood. Monica loved her flower dresses and stories about angels when she was a child, which showed how kind and caring she was. Following her graduation from Oxnard, California's Rio Mesa High School in 1975, Monica began her career path. She got her first job as a teller at a bank in Oxnard in 1977. Monica married Jeff Mintz in the early 1980s. They had 2 children together, Andrew Mintz in 1984 and Stephanie Mintz in 1987. Even though her married life seemed safe at first, the marriage ended in divorce in the late 1980s. Monica was looking for a new start, and her life took a good turn when she met Floyd Leach at a church event. They hit it off right away, which led to a growing friendship. After going out together for 7 months, Monica and Floyd got married in 1990. Floyd's 2 sons were at first wary, but they soon became close, and Monica kept a good relationship with her ex-husband Jeff, who had custody of their kids at the time. Monica wanted to make sure her new family was safe, so friends and family told her to move to Thousand Oaks, which is known for being safer than the Oxnard area, where she had been working. After thinking about what they said, Monica chose to look for work closer to her family. In 1997, she became a teller at Western Financial Bank in Thousand Oaks. She hoped that moving would make her feel safer and bring her closer to her family and friends. Monica was the victim of a terrible crime just 2 months into her new life. This event would change the lives of everyone who knew and cared about her forever. On April 28, 1997, Monica was working hard at her job at the Western Financial Bank, which was located at 2920 East Thousand Oaks Boulevard. There were only the manager, Monica, and 2 other workers at the bank that early in the morning. The security guards had not yet shown up. Everyone got a false sense of normality from the way the sunny morning went. However, in an instant, the peace turned into a terrifying nightmare. In the bank, 2 people wearing reflective vests, hard hats, and nylon tights to hide their faces came in as construction workers. The lack of plexiglass between the workers and the customers made them easy targets for crime. The armed men quickly grabbed the 4 bank workers and led them into the vault room. 3 of the workers were bound, but Monica was not. She was told to open the vault, though. What happened next, though, was something no one saw coming. Monica easily gave in to the thieves' request because she was scared. Her shaking hands showed how upset she was as she opened the locker. She could not do anything because they had her arms tightly tied behind her back and made her kneel. But fate, being so cruel it is hard to understand, saved the worst for Monica. The masked attacker cruelly pressed the gun's barrel against the back of her head and, with one irreversible pull of the trigger, put out her lifeless spirit. As instructed, the other workers kept their eyes straight ahead, so they did not notice the horrible scene happening behind them. They were shocked and confused when Monica's lifeless body hit the floor, breaking the deafening quiet. They all let out a gasp. Monica could not find safety in compliance. And even when she did cooperate, her life was cruelly taken away. It did not take long for the 2 crooks to get away from the scene of the horrible crime. They got away in a car. As soon as the cops arrived at the scene, they began a thorough investigation. Finding Monica's dead body in the vault room proved that she had died tragically from a single gunshot to the back of the head. Additionally, the cops found that the thieves had gotten away with $9,000 in stolen money. In order to bring justice to Monica's case, the police went to the bank and immediately asked to see the surveillance footage that had been recorded during the incident. Even though the video quality was not great, it gave us a look at what was going on inside the bank. They carefully took out the pictures and sent them to the police, where experts worked hard to make clear pictures of the masked thieves. After being printed, these pictures were passed around town in the hopes of getting leads. Good luck to the police, because the thieves' escape was soon ruined by a lucky turn of events, a car accident. The accident, which was a strange turn of events, gave police a valuable clue in their never-ending search for justice. Even though the car used in the crime had been quickly repainted, police were able to find it and immediately take it away to thoroughly examine it. A very important piece in the investigation's complicated puzzle. In response to the horrible crime, the local banks and kind donors came together and raised a large prize of $160,000 for anyone who could help identify and catch the criminals. Despite the investigation's early progress and the discovery of important clues like composite sketches of the thieves and the getaway car, the case finally came to a dead end. In the 1990s, there was a huge increase in crime in Southern California. Bank robberies got to scary levels. The FBI kept track of over 2,600 bank thefts in 1992. That is about 7 every day. Criminal groups from South Los Angeles started doing more crimes in places like Thousand Oaks, which made people in the area feel uneasy. Floyd Leach, Monica's heartbroken husband, refused to give up as time went by. Even though years had passed quickly, Floyd was still determined to see the case through to the end. Moving by Floyd's unwavering commitment and the unbreakable spirit he possessed, the Ventura County Sheriff's Office saw the lingering shadow of unanswered grief and made a firm choice. They would bring up the ghosts of the past and carefully look over old proof that had been dormant for too long. The wheels of justice started to turn again as time kept going by. Floyd's drive, that of the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, and the sound of an unfulfilled promise came together to make a loud call for truth and closure. The cops talked to the Crips, who are one of the oldest gangs in Southwest Los Angeles, before they did any forensic tests, because they were close to the crime. The cops thought they were involved from the start. Perry Dido, a well-known Crips member, gave useful information during the conversation. He admitted that he had a bad past and had spent a lot of time in jail, but he said that he had changed his life. When asked about the terrible bank robbery and murder of Monica, Dido said it seemed like gang behavior, but he could not name the people who were involved. He did say, though, that despair could lead to such horrible actions. Even though he did not agree with what they did, he thought that poverty and hard times often made people desperate, which led some people to turn to crime. Dido's words put light on a possible reason for the murder, pointing to desperation as a factor. The information did not excuse the crime, but it did help the cops figure out what might have caused it. Even with all the ideas, the case was still unsolved, which caused Floyd a lot of pain and distress. Finally, after 24 long years, there was a glimmer of hope in 2020. one that the case might finally make progress. Evidence that has been carefully stored for years and has not been touched could finally be tested again using cutting-edge DNA extraction technology that can find even the smallest amounts of genetic material. The investigators felt hopeful again after this amazing development, which made them even more determined to find the truth and give Monica's case the closure it so badly needed. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office Forensic Services Bureau started looking at data collected many decades ago again in 2021. Using cutting-edge technology, they were able to connect very small amounts of DNA found on things like the handcuffs. Even though the test was moving quickly, the process was still very complicated. In 2023, after 2 years, the police finally found a suspect whose DNA was in the saw sample. Concerning how the police found the suspect, Christina Castillione, a forensic scientist and local CODI supervisor, talked about touch DNA and how important it is in investigations. She said that touch DNA is made up of the cells that are left behind when someone touches something. These cells have less DNA than body fluids like blood or saliva. More advanced technology can now find very small amounts of DNA. This makes touch DNA analysis useful, especially when there is not much other proof. The case made a big step forward when DNA from the crime scene matched a person named Kevin Ray James, who is 55 years old. The police nabbed James at his home in San Bernardino on March 10, 2023, and took him into custody. He was named as a suspect by the Ventura County Sheriff's Office in the murder of Monica Leach, which had been unsolved for more than 20 years. The Ventura County Jail was holding James without bail while he waited his hearing. He was charged with first-degree murder during a robbery, which shows how bad the crime was said to be. The arrest and following charges were a major turning point in the investigation and gave people hope that justice would be done for Monica's death. Right now, the public does not have any new details about who the second suspect is. There is no question that the police are working hard to find and arrest the person responsible for the horrible crime. Time has really sped up this case, so there is no room for delay. Even though there was progress in the case, there are still some questions. Kevin Ray James did something terrible and violent to Monica Leach. What made him do it? Did he do it by himself, or did other people help him? What will happen in court, and will Monica's family and the people of Thousand Oaks finally get justice? When Monica Lynn Leach's case was finally over, it showed how dedicated the people who never gave up hope, would not let her memory fade, and worked hard to find the truth were. Monica's case shows how unsolved crimes have a huge effect on the families of victims, how strong people are who are looking for justice, and how powerful drive can be even when things go wrong. To honor Monica's memory and give her family and the community a sense of closure after the long period of grief, we can only hope that the court process goes forward and more information becomes known. What are your thoughts about these cases? Let us know in the comments section below.